Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
A very warm welcome. Good morning to Newsline, live from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And joining me this morning is my colleague Bandula Jayasekara, dressed in resplendent blue. Morning, Bandula.
Good morning, Faraz.
How are you doing?
Fine.
Excellent. And we are also delighted to have on our show this morning Mr. Gomin Dasri, the very senior and much respected attorney at law. How are you?
I love to talk with you, Faraz.
We'll also be joined by another guest. He's probably stuck in traffic. But in the meantime, we will talk to Mr. Dasri about this. Mr. Dasri, the issue of Lasantha Wickrematunge. Ceylon Today reveals some somewhat sensational details that two DIGs, according to this article, have removed incriminating pages in the CIB. Isn't that astonishing?
Astonishing, and in fact very sad, because Lasantha worked as my junior for many years. Then he was a secretary, private secretary to Mrs. Bandaranayake. And I remember Lasantha was a wonderful junior to have, because he always had handled defamation matters, and he always, for us, something I think media should know well, give the other person an equal chance of hearing when you are criticizing him. That was the motto. So I'm very sad that two police officers have decided, or if that is correct, that's a very serious matter, and they should not be allowed to retire. Even their retirement papers can be kept pending, and their superannuation benefits can be affected if they have done this wrong thing. Because if you are trying to clean the police force, you must do it at the top. You can't do it just taking a constable in a remote area and punishing him is not what is material. The message must seep in, and that message can only seep if people, the big fish, are caught and duly taken to task.
The article in Ceylon Today on page 2 says that they are former DIGs, indicating perhaps that they have already retired. What can now be done?
Well, undoubtedly any destruction of valuable evidence is a criminal offense, is something wrongful, and whether they are officers or not, they can be taken to questioning. They should bring them, question them, and if they are found, if there's material to warrant allegations, then you can charge them. And I think a finding is necessary, because this is a very serious matter, covering up evidence that is not permitted in courts of law, and action should be taken.
So there's nothing to preclude a prosecution, even though they may well be in retirement.
Well, the act was done when they held official positions. Now they have retired because they have come to a certain retiring age, but that doesn't make them any less guilty of the same crime that they've committed.
And can the police take action, and apart from taking them to court, can their let's say their pensions, can they suspend those pensions?
I suppose it is possible to take disciplinary action. I cannot tell you without knowing the provisions with regard to the pension needs in the police department, whether they can withdraw the pension, but certainly action can be taken, and they can be taken they can find charges against them.
And I'm sure now you have one DIG, a former DIG behind bars, then there's another DIG behind bars for pressure hunting, UK Disanayake. So 2 DIGs, so I'm sure you can take action.
Definitely, because also remember there are so many DIGs today. That I think the old days we had the DIG for a province. Now I think there are so many. They are as prolific as the President's Council.
No.
I mean, you probably find them, and as I said, there are more trees than President's Council in Harsdorf. So in the same way, I would say that there are too many DIGs, and when you reach that kind of position, the people of stature should be there, people who are responsible, who bring glory, who bring credit to the department. But this kind of thing is very bad. I mean, it gives a totally wrong message to the public. And these are people who are there to safeguard the public. What are they doing? They are harming the public. They are doing, by wearing the uniform, they are acting against the law.
Women, shouldn't the people who did this inquiry should be brought back under oath and ask them to give their reports, the two DIGs?
Yes, they can be. I mean, any questioning should be under oath. I mean, or they must certify, they must sign the statements. So they should be treated like any ordinary citizen. There should be no cover just because they were DIGs once upon a time. Take them as in citizens. Take them like any other ordinary person and take them in for questioning.
Just as the FCID and the Pressifak, or rather Pressifak, is doing with the former president, Mahinda Rajapaksa. He's making lots of frequent, almost regular visits to BMICH.
So if you can get the former president to make frequent visits, you surely should be able to get some DIGs to make some visits. They
Very
should
well
do that.
put.
I mean, they should have done it already.
Yes. I mean, and this matter of the killing of Lasanta Wickrematunge has attracted the attention of the world and has caused so much of negativity internationally for Sri Lanka as a country. And I think it's about time that some serious action was taken. And I hope that they do go after these two DIGs and ensure that nobody is above the law.
I think you have said everything that is necessary. I didn't add to it. You have got I think that is exactly the right route to take.
And not only the DIGs, but everybody who did the inquiry.
Yes, there should be no cover-ups.
The Daily News reports this morning that the AG has filed an indictment against former Minister Johnston Fernando. The amount of he's being charged under the Public Property Act. The amount is rather minuscule in comparison to some of the transactions, but a good start, don't you think?
It's a good start, but also we had this secretary to the presidential Pressifak, Lasil Fernando, saying that the rice racket is huge. They're investigating into that, and that's huge, which has affected the masses for us, the ordinary people. And also we have heard that 17 containers which from the airport, from the port, disappeared of rice. This was to go to the ordinary people. So I'm sure there will be more inquiries on this.
That's good. It looks like these things all coming out.
Especially affecting the masses. I think that's really what, it hurts the ordinary people.
And then, Mr. Dashi, as you watch over these activities, are you sort of encouraged by what's happening?
To an extent, yes, and to an extent, no. Because what I would like to see is that these prosecutions are completed very rapidly, both for the interest of the accused and for the party prosecuting. Because it is always best to get a decision during the period of a regime which decides to institute prosecution. Because you often find when there's a change of regime, cases suddenly collapse. And when the cases are on during the previous regime, it meanders meaninglessly. I mean, all kinds of dates are obtained, adjournments are given. I mean, there is a definite attempt, I feel, that when you file an action against the VIP, that you allow the case to meander, drag, to go into to a change of regime when the prosecution fails. What does it mean? That means a lack of confidence in the judiciary, lack of confidence in the prosecution, especially the Attorney General's Department. These things should be put on a fast track when a VIP comes online, because it is in the interest of public, because a very clear message is given to the public that VIPs are not privileged of animals, and you should find them quickly. If they are not guilty, as if Mr. Johnson Fernando is not guilty, exonerate him. He can then complain it's a witch hunt. Otherwise, they complain it's a witch hunt. There is no end to it, and it looks like a witch hunt because there is no finding.
But the politicians are trying to say these are all political cases. This is the sad thing, which are not. I mean, these affects ordinary people. And how do they become VIPs?
Well, certainly,
if they are important people, they wouldn't be doing these things.
Yes, but Bandula, a person also is deemed innocent till you are found guilty. So they have the right to take up any defense, and a natural defense always would be, an automatic defense will be, it's a witch hunt.
Gomin, how is your good friend Sarath Silva doing? He's in the news, right?
He's always in the news. I think he's trying to get into news, and he gets into news and gets very badly mauled in news because he shifts sides. He's an intellect. He's an able man. But I don't know why he has to stoop to these levels of running after politicians.
But if he's an intellect and able man, you think he'll have this sort of utterances? If you say that he's intellectual and able?
I would dare say he's intellectual. I would dare say he's able. But at the same time, I would say that he has very many, a few weak points, that is tender points, to which he succumbs, and therefore he needs the blessings of the politicians. I remember there was certain allegations against him, and Chandrika Bandaranaike is supposed to have prorogued parliament to help him out. So you have to, the thing is, when you hold a certain position, you must safeguard the interest of that position. And that in not doing so, or possibly not doing so, he has had to bend and succumb to politicians.
Some weeks ago you went on a ship, didn't you?
Yes.
Have you ever wondered how come the satellite system on the ship works? Because the ship is sailing and it's going up, down, sideways, it's turning.
I had no time to check all
You
that.
didn't?
Yeah.
Right, well, Sarath Silva is a bit like that. He's a bit like on a gyro. Because the gyro adjusts for the ship when it goes down, up, sideways, it does a U-turn and it comes back. And Sarath Silva is a bit like that. And the other day I was astonished at his accusations against our network and our group. Perhaps he wants us to take him to court. I hope we do, actually, because he must learn his lesson.
You're trying to take him out of his retirement. You're not allowing him to relax, right?
No, there were certain judgments of his that was wonderful to read and much appreciated, but he's obviously taken some sort of leave of whatever senses he had. That's my personal opinion, Sarath. Okay. Mr. Dasri, do you know just going back to these DIGs, now clearly these DIGs aren't the people who did the investigation. They may have removed the pages, according to Ceylon Today, from the book. But what about the officers who conducted the investigation? Shouldn't we bring them under oath and get them to make statements as to why they did whatever it is they did?
What is important to me is for whose benefit did they remove those pages?
That's right.
That's a very important question that we should ascertain, because they wouldn't have done it for themselves. They were not implicated in this. They would have done it for the benefit of somebody. Who is that somebody? How did they get influenced by that such person? Then the next question that attracts me is the fact that there are investigating officers who would have seen this kind of thing happen. Have they hushed it up? If that is so, that is dangerous. And if they are still on in office, well, you can have internal disciplinary inquiries against them, because covering up seems to have taken in two stages. That DIG is, if this newspaper is correct, has withdrawn these papers, maybe at the beckoning of somebody. Then that has been discovered, but till this newspaper article did surface, it was not within public knowledge, but certainly it would have been within the knowledge of the department. The department should have taken necessary action. So we see wheels within wheels, and these things should all be unraveled at this stage.
But it's very sad that 7 years later, Lasantha Wickrematunge's killing, unlawful killing, is still to be explained.
Yes, Faraz, but Lasantha is a person whom I knew well, and I can tell you, not for 7 years, even for 14 years, his name will linger on with this kind of investigations. That's Lasantha. He will keep it going, because finally there will be a bombshell which will be unleashed and which people will become aware of.
But you know, these investigators, they may sort of reveal even more sensational information. Like, for example, they may have been asked to shut up if they valued their lives.
shut up and also shut out evidence.
Yeah.
Both have happened.
But everybody is looking for a closure. We have so many issues in this country, so many incidents. That's what people are looking, whether it's in the south or the east or the north. That's what,
Yes, I mean that's very important, and that is why I'm waiting for my friend Saravana Muttu. I think he's supposed to join you, isn't it?
I think he's lost his way.
Oh, I hope it's not because I'm on the program.
I don't know. We'll come back and discuss some more interesting or as interesting matters after this very short commercial break. Do stay tuned to Newsline.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
Welcome back to Newsline, live from the Dawson Street studios of TV1. Obviously, our guest this morning, our other guest, has been held up. So, unfortunately, it appears that Dr. Pakisoti Saravanamuttu from the CPA will not be joining us this morning. However, I was waiting for him to join us, but I'll raise the issue with you, Ms. Kadashi.
I hope I'll be adequate enough to answer you.
Your title, if the girls got it right this morning, says Senior, Much Respected and Revered Attorney at Law. So I'm sure you can. In the matter of the Centre for Policy Alternatives, the CPA action against, I think it was Ratnasiri Vikramanayake, some time ago, when they complained about his appointment, that matter sort of never reached the Supreme Court. Why is that? What happened there? Do you know the details?
I would like to commend the CPA and Mr. Saravanamuttu especially because they have taken up this issue of Sarath Fonseca's appointment. I think that is very commendable because you see our law is very secure on that aspect, both the Constitution and the Parliamentary Elections Act. It says that it is only when a person is in the list of nominees for the post of nomination of the appointed MPs or in any other list can you be made a member of Parliament. In other words, it must be a list of the relevant party concerned. For example, in this case, Mr. Sarath Fonseca was not a member of the UNP or SLFP. He was a member of a different party.
Yeah.
And he has been installed in Parliament. Now, this was contested before because there was Ratnasiri Vikramanayake and also another, I think that's the present Justice, Mr. Rajapaksa. Were both not in the SLFP list, but they appointed Mr. Rajapaksa and as a nominated MP and Mr. Ratnasiri Vikramanayake also a nominated MP and thereafter appointed as the Prime Minister.
Right.
Now
so
at that stage, very commendably again, the CPA took it up in the Court of Appeal. They raised this matter. And the Court of Appeal did not make a pronouncement. What they did was, they said they had no jurisdiction to go into the matter because this concerns MPs. I don't think that is correct because undoubtedly the Constitution gives powers to determine who is eligible to be a nominated member. When you're clearly out of that reach, then the courts have a right to make a determination. But nevertheless, let's take the decision as it is. But at that stage, very strangely, it is one thing I wanted to ask my friend Saravanamuttu, why did they withdraw the case? Because they could have taken the next step of going to the Supreme Court. That is the logical next step you should take.
there is a uncorroborated, unchecked claim that our dear friend Sarah was part of a plot, if you like, or offer was being made apparently, but like I say, it's not corroborated, so it's just a story, and he's not here to answer it, that Sarah was going to be appointed the foreign minister.
Yeah, but why do you say that? Because he was taking the SLFP to court. So that was, I think it was a UNP government at that time, or?
Yes, but if I don't think I don't know the truth of the story. I don't like to believe, because Saravanamuttu, in my opinion, would have made a very poor choice as a foreign minister, but leave it that as it may be. But if he was in fact being thought for that position, this decision would have affected him very badly if the CPA succeeded in that case. I don't think that had a relevant factor in withdrawing the case. But if it was so, then that is why certain allegations are made. It would have been much better if the CPA took its logic, they took it to the logical step of going to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court has the right to interpret the Constitution.
That's a mere allegation. Now, at least now they have moved on and they have taken this case up,
which I think is very commendable. They have taken this, and they still have the right to argue the entirety of it, because the courts did not make a pronouncement on that occasion. Now, this is where I think a person whom I have great respect is the Election Commissioner. I think he did a marvelous job of holding the last 2 elections according to the letter of the law.
Isn't he at fault in this case?
But in this case, he's very much at fault. I fault him very much, and I've lost respect to him to some degree, because he could have pointed out that such people are not eligible, because that is so in the Constitution, which is the supreme document, and even the Supreme Court, mind you, is beneath the Constitution. Remember, judges of the Supreme Court are not above the law. They are also beneath the law, or like all of us. Now, he should have objected to it, and even if he didn't want to object, he could have taken another step. He could have got a clarification from the Supreme Court. He could have gone to the Supreme Court and find out from them whether such persons are eligible in interpreting the Constitution. His failing to do so gives him the impression that he is now becoming a virtue. That allegation could be made. I don't believe it is so, but allegation could, that he is becoming a political animal, because he has permitted a person clearly out of the reach of the Constitution be a nominated member. Now, I think this is very unfair by Mr. Sarath Fonseca also. If he is disqualified by any chance by this action, it will bring him a lot of discredit, because of the fact that they'll say he shifted parties, he was prepared to flout the Constitution, he wanted position. I think
be that as it may, Lasantha's very famous little words, be that as it may, Sarath Fonseca is coming to answer sort of a national call. He's coming over, and he's expected to be taking up a ministerial role. So he's doing so because the President and the Prime Minister have decided that the country needs his input. Therefore, aren't there there must be some mitigating circumstance?
Not in law, because the Constitution is supreme. The Prime Minister and the President are bound by the Constitution, and Constitution is very clear as to who should hold a rank of a cabinet minister. A person who is not entitled becomes a usurper, and he has no right to hold that position. Now, I think it's very unfair by Mr. Fonseca, who is undoubtedly a war hero, who has done a great service for this country, to be made to be reduced in status if he is removed by the Supreme Court.
Well, that's what we have been looking at.
Yes, I've been looking at that. What does that say there?
The Prime Minister is surrounded by beauties.
A bevy of beauties. There's a photograph of the Prime Minister with many Miss Tourism contestants.
Beauty and brains, or what?
But what's the point? What do you think is the point? Is there a point?
Yeah, I mean, the beauties were taken to meet the Prime Minister of the country.
Well, you know, I'm bound to say, what's the point? Well, there is one point. I mean, let me ask a question. Just because these beautiful girls are being surrounded by this aged man, is it going to help tourism?
Maybe.
Well, it's only a slight possibility, isn't there? We're joined in the last few minutes by Dr. Saravanamuttu, who will be up on your screen shortly. But in the meantime, whilst they wire him up,
traffic.
I was going to ask you, isn't it astonishing, Bandula, that the Minister of Health, who's had some sort of complaint, a medical complaint, has jetted off to Singapore?
Yeah, this is sad for the masses of this country.
Is that because we don't have adequate facilities here, that our doctors they are underqualified?
No,
Last night they told me that it wasn't, it was the opposite.
Yeah, the sad thing is, what about the masses? They are the ones who suffer. They have no places to go.
Right.
I mean, you go to the OPDs, how much they suffer. I'm sure we can ask Sarah about it.
Indeed. Good morning, Dr. Sarvarutu, and thank you for making it here. We're sorry you got held up in traffic. Tell us, you are now going to, the CPA have petitioned the Supreme Court in terms of Sanath Fonseca's appointment.
Correct.
Very commendable. But when it was the turn of Ratnasri Vikramanayake some years ago, you all went to the appeal court.
We started in the appeal court because we were concerned about the composition of the Supreme Court and didn't pursue the case eventually because we were concerned that there would be a full bench of the Supreme Court constituted with regard to it and that we might risk getting a very adverse verdict.
Oh, so it was a tactical move.
Yes.
I see. We were considering whether there was some sort of offer on the table of some sort of
That's
appointment.
very severe view of ours.
Yes, I thought so. I did say that it was uncorroborated. But then isn't Field Marshal coming over to serve a national need? Yes,
Well,
so isn't there any mitigating circumstance?
Whatever need he's serving, the important thing is this, is that we need to establish a system of governance where ends do not justify means, where it is important that constitutional principles are upheld, that basic democratic principles are upheld. The basis of the case against Mr. Fonseca's inclusion into Parliament as a member is that at the time of an election, the voters need to know who the candidates are and from which party they are contesting. And this does not hold in the Field Marshal's case. This is not a personal petition or anything like that. It is upholding that principle that when it comes to, after all, elections are the basic mechanism of choice and change
Yes, but
in a functioning democracy. Let's get it right.
But this national list, wasn't it wasn't it designed at the outset to bring in people who are not politically motivated, if you like, but professionals, people who can add value to government?
Yes, of course it was designed to bring in people who could add value, but it was also designed to do it in a particular way, that it does not infringe upon the freedom of choice and expression of the voters.
Just one more thing, if I could say, for us, I totally agree with Mr. Saravanamutu on that count, but I just can't understand why he decided to withdraw from that without taking the next step of going to the Supreme Court, saying he has no confidence. That's a queer thing to say, because when there's a hierarchy of courts, it would have been far more convincing if he went to the Supreme Court, got an adverse decision, and then criticized it. Instead of that, when you weaken at an earlier stage and pull out, saying you withdraw the case, we didn't have a final decision because the Supreme Court has the right. Unlike the Court of Appeal, which said that they had no right to decide because they had no jurisdiction, the Supreme Court has the right to interpret. Now, at that stage, I just can't understand how the CPA decided not to take it merely because they had a feeling that they won't get justice. If that is so, then the whole system collapses, because people don't have the right to say. They must go contest it and then find.
I think this is absolute nonsense. I think it is, for a start, we withdrew on the basis of legal advice. When it came from the legal fraternity, that seemed to be a damning self-indictment from within that fraternity of the court system in the country. It was a tough decision to make. But at the same time, I don't think anyone can deny that if we risked getting an adverse verdict, you would have got all sorts of things happening with regard to the appointment of MPs in Parliament.
Because you'd be stuck with it.
Yes, you'd be stuck with it. And secondly, the point about it is this, the more important point about it was the extent to which we had a judiciary which was blatantly politicized in the way that it was, and what it has taken to crawl out of that mire. and what the legal fraternity themselves did with regard to doing so.
Well, very, very, very interesting this morning it has been, don't you think?
I'm sure you should invite Sarah back because we had just 4 minutes.
Indeed.
And tomorrow we have, with the Patrick, we have Basil Fernando from the Asian Human Rights Commission. Maybe
Indeed.
you should join Basil tomorrow.
Well, Dr. Saravastu, thank you for making
Thank you.
an appearance. And Mr. Dasri, thank you very much for your presence.
Thank you. Just one last word. I think it's very clear advice given by the legal fraternity, and you don't.
We'll have to.
We'll
We'll run out of time, so we're going to have to debate that on one of our many other programs that come your way from TV1, that brand new channel from the Capital Maharaja Group. Thank you for watching Newsline. We hope you've had a enjoyable past half an hour. Do keep watching. In the meantime, have a good day. Take care and God bless.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukut Ali.